Good evening, everyone. Welcome to a virtual gallery talk hosted by the Fairfield University Art Museum. My name is Michelle DiMarzo. I'm the Curator of Education and Academic Engagement for the Fairfield University Art Museum. And it is my pleasure to introduce tonight's virtual speaker, who's Maureen Kelleher, who is the co-founder of the Social Justice Collaboration Quilts Project. Many of you may already know and have probably visited the show Stitching Time, the Social Justice Collaboration Quilts Project that is currently on view in our Walsh Gallery at Fairfield University. This will be on view through December 13th. So we hope that if you are in the Connecticut or New York metropolitan region, that you will stop in and see the exhibition in person because these quilts are absolutely extraordinary to view up close. Our wonderful producer is going to drop into the chat right now a link to our website, which you can also navigate to at fairfield.edu/museum/stitching-time, or you can just click on the link if that is easier. And on our website, you will find, among other things, a virtual reality 360-degree tour of this exhibition. So you will be able to sort of zoom around if you wish on the virtual edition, or you can watch some of the still images that Maureen will be showing during her talk this evening. I also want to make very clear that we are really looking forward to questions from the audience. Maureen is looking forward to questions from the audience. So as she's speaking, you can put any questions you have in the chat. And at the conclusion of her remarks, I will come back on screen and we'll have a discussion based on what it is that you want to know. And certainly I have some questions for Maureen as well. To introduce tonight's speaker, Maureen Kelleher co-founded the Social Justice Collaboration Quilts Project with Kenya Baleech Alkebu in 2012 to teach the world about the prison hospice program at Louisiana State Penitentiary, to create a bridge for communication and support between inside quilters and free quilters, to give voice to the quilters' creativity, political consciousness, and more. Maureen Kelleher is an artist, activist, and private investigator who became interested in prisoners' rights and has since worked on numerous capital crimes and felony cases. And I just want to say we are so grateful to Maureen for working with us to bring the Stitching Time exhibition to the Fairfield University Art Museum. So without further ado, I turn it over to our speaker. Welcome, Maureen.
Hi, thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Jesse, for doing all this. Welcome and thank you for attending this live stream event. My name is Maureen Kelleher. I'm the director and co-founder of the Social Justice Collaboration Quilts Project. The project's co-founder is Kenya Baleech Alkebu. And as we roll around the exhibit and see the quilts today, you'll notice that Kenya is our master quilter. He is, I'd say, the most talented quilter in the group. Kenya is 69 years old, a wonderful creative spirit, and he has been locked up in Angola Prison for 47 plus years. Okay, I'm going to explain a little bit about the project, how it got started, etc., before we go into looking at the individual quilts. How did the project get started? Kenya and I have been pen pals for decades. We've known each other 30 plus years. We met in about 1988 when I went to the prison to attend a drama club banquet. Kenya was a member of the Angola Prison Drama Club. We haphazardly stayed in touch for some years, but then in about 2005, I'd say, we started to write more letters to each other and more often. In 2012, Kenya and I were on the phone, me in New Jersey, and he was in Angola, Louisiana, and we got to talking about quilts and quilt making. He didn't know that I had made quilts, and I didn't know or remember that he made quilts also. He told me about his quilt making with the Angola hospice program Quilters, and how the hospice inmate volunteers had taught themselves how to make quilts so they could sell them to raise money for the hospice program and to buy stuff that the dying men needed to stay comfortable. When I heard about this hospice program and how the men had taught themselves how to make quilts, I was blown away. And I said, we got to tell the world about the Angola hospice program. So that's how this quilts project got born. A conversation on the phone in 2012. At first, it was just me and Kenya in the project. He gave me some quilts and sent me some quilts, and we decided we'd keep on going. We keep collecting quilts and making them. And there's a funny story, a little funny. When we first started, Kenya didn't think this quilt project was going to go anywhere. He only told me that somewhat recently. He told me years later, somewhat recently. And now we have made lots of quilts and had many exhibitions, and there are now inside quilters and outside quilters. How did the project grow from two people, me and Kenya, to the group we are now? Kenya and I decided he would invite other men inside with him to join the project. I issued an invitation to the man, and if he agreed, he was in the project. It didn't matter if he could quilt or not. Kenya would teach them all, and he was able to mentor them in the art of quilt making. Unfortunately, the nature of prison means men get moved around whether they like it or not. So many of the inside quilters are now nowhere near Kenya to learn the quilting as we had originally thought it would unfold. Oh, no pun intended, quilts unfold. Remember, Angola Prison is 18,000 acres large. It's a farm working agricultural prison in the deep south. So Kenya invited some of his friends inside to join the project initially. I invited some family and friends of mine to join in also. So then we soon had a nice group of inside quilters and outside quilters. We also wanted our quilts to go beyond the squares and the triangles and circles of traditional quilts that you'd see on your grandmother's quilts. We wanted our quilts to be the medium through which we expressed ourselves and our thoughts. Our quilts would be the expression of our ideas about different people, living or from the past, who we admired. We want our quilts to express our ideas about current events and cultural events. What we didn't want was anyone in Department of Corrections, any prison administrators to be able to tell us what we could and couldn't say on our quilts or what images we could put on our quilts. That was very important to us, creative freedom and expression. Today, there are 17 inside quilters and about 4 outside quilters. Most of the inside quilters are in Angola Prison, aka Louisiana State Penitentiary, located in Angola, Louisiana. But we have one member, Abu Ali, who is serving a life sentence in Tennessee Department of Corrections in Nashville. And we have 2 quilts in our big pot of quilts, and they were donated by inmates at Norton Correctional Facility in Norton, Kansas. Some of the themes of our quilts. The themes run the gamut from whimsical and fun to downright serious and somber. There is a Juneteenth quilt, a quilt about the choking death of Eric Garner. Hope is one quilt's theme. Civil rights and social activism are also themes on the quilts. Some of the people who you'll see on our quilts include Abraham Lincoln, Amanda Gorman, James Baldwin, Harriet Tubman, and Eric Garner. How do the quilts made in collaboration between free people and inmates actually get made? Some of the quilts are made 100% from the inside in 2 ways. The hospice quilts we buy to support the hospice program, they're made 100% in the prison by the hospice volunteer quilters. And some of Kenya's quilts are made inside from start to finish 100% inside the prison, and then they get mailed out to me. Sometimes just the top piece, the pretty piece of a quilt will be made inside the prison, and it'll be sent out to me, and we outside quilters will finish it. We add the batting, the back, the border, and the loops for hanging to get it exhibition ready. Sometimes we'll set the tone or the theme, and I'll put a call out for anyone to join in and contribute a fabric patch, and then that patch, all the patches get mailed to me, and they all get sewn together to make the top piece. Then someone on the outside will finish it completely. Are the quilts for sale? No, the quilts are not made to make money. They are made to go into exhibitions like this one to spread the word about men in prison who are creative and who support the dying hospice patients inside the prison. The project is a way to give the men inside a creative voice and a way for the outside world to see and to hear the men inside through their art. The project and the quilts create a bridge between the free and the incarcerated. This project is a way to show free people that it's possible to make art with the men and women inside. Yes, they are far away, and it's not easy to get to them physically, but it is possible to have a creative exchange with them while they are in prison. It is possible to bring their art, our collaboration art, collaborative art, out and into the free world, so we get a little peek into the lives of the folks behind bars, almost in real time, current time. Let's see. Okay. Their creativity is valuable, and it is a welcome addition to the art world. These men, like everyone, have something to say and something to contribute. What do the men inside have to gain by being a part of this project? They get a creative outlet. They get a connection to something that touches the outside world, and they can be a part of it. This is very important to people in prison. Being involved in this project brings them to the feeling I'm not forgotten, or I'm valued and somebody cares about me. And they can escape, in a sense, from the boredom of prison, life for a little bit while they're making their contribution to a quilt. And they can be part of something bigger than they are, and it's based in freedom. It is beyond the barbed wire. The men know their art, their actions are valued, and in the free world. Okay, before we look at the quilts, I'd like to give here a brief nod of acknowledgement to the Bodhicitta Trust, whose trustee is the Buddhist nun, the Venerable Robina Corton. The Bodhicitta Trust has supported this project for many years, and that support has made so much possible up to now and into the future. For example, with the funds, we can afford a steady stream of emails back and forth between the inside quilters and the outside quilters. We can afford to give the men a gift of money every now and then. We can afford to keep the lights on, so to speak, at the project. And so the money from the Bodhicitta Trust, it does let us keep up daily, if they want, emails back and forth. The prisoners are allowed to write emails. They are DOC controlled, but I don't think the prison is really reading all these emails that we're sending back and forth. Okay. Venerable Robina, Buddhist nun, FYI, also founded the Liberation Prison Project, which is writing letters to men and women in prison worldwide. The Liberation Prison Project offers spiritual advice, teachings, and Dharma books to folks who are interested in Buddhism, all free of charge to the incarcerated. Lastly, there is a wonderful documentary called Chasing Buddha. It's about Venerable Robina's work with men on Kentucky death row and a glimpse into her life as she moves around the world teaching Buddhism. I highly recommend this film, Chasing Buddha. You can probably find it on YouTube. Okay, I just have to blow my nose a little bit. Okay, Michelle, let's move on to the quilts, and I can speak a bit about each one. Okay, the first quilt is called Amanda Gorman, The Hill We Climb. This quilt features the entire poem written in longhand on fabric by the 2021 Youth Poet Laureate Amanda Gorman. Miss Gorman read her poem at the inauguration of President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris on January 20, 2021. What are some of the themes of Amanda Gorman's poem, The Hill We Climb? There are themes of hope, unity, healing in the face of division, and a shared journey toward a better day, a new dawn. The colors. The poem covers 3 panels. You can see the 3 panels. The poem is long. The panels are from left to right, red, white, and blue. to emphasize our national colors and patriotism. The individual patches and the color theme, there isn't one. The quilters just got any fabric they could, wrote their lines on the fabric, and sent in their patches to me. How the quilt actually got made, I assigned lines from the poem to several members of the project and friends of the project. In total, there are, I don't know, you can see all the people involved up on the screen. There are a lot of people who contributed to this quilt. People contributed their lines of poetry so that the entire poem is written and on the quilts panels in the quilters' handwriting and style. So we have inside quilters and outside quilters writing out their designated lines of poetry to pull them all together to make the whole poem in longhand on the quilt. There was a very unique assist here with this quilt. Greg Bishop, a senior writer at Sports Illustrated magazine, he is pen pals with one of the inside quilters named Cliff. But at the time, at the time we were set to make the quilt, Cliff was in lockdown in the cell blocks, and he couldn't access art materials. So Greg came to the rescue. He stepped in for Cliff, and he actually wrote the lines of the poem that were assigned to Cliff on the fabric, all for Cliff. And he signed both their names. So when you see the quilt, you'll see Greg Bishop. He made Cliff's patch for him, and it was very kind of Greg to do this because he told me, and we emailed back and forth, he had never done any kind of artwork with fabric before. And I had to tell him where to buy fabric. So I told him, look, you just go to a fabric shop and this is what you ask for and this is how much you need. So that's that. Okay, the next quilt is called Martin Got Arrested Again. The theme of the quilt is Dr. Martin Luther King's work for civil rights in the USA and his numerous arrests throughout his civil rights work and career. The colors, you can see the brilliant, varied colors that Kenya chose for each image of Dr. King. So obviously, let's see, 4, 8, 12. 12 panels. Each panel is a different color combination by Kenya. This quilt is another unique collaboration effort. For this quilt, Kenya started out by taking that image of Martin Luther King that I had mailed to him. The image I sent him was of Dr. King featured on the cover of the New Yorker magazine. The image was created by Brooklyn artist Ronald Wimberly. Kenya wanted to use Ronald's image as the basis for his quilt, the King images, so he copied Ronald's image of King in various colors that you can see here. Ronald gave his permission for Kenya to use his image of Dr. King, and then Kenya used various colors for the same image. And voila, we see Kenya's own color variations of Ronald's image of Dr. King all across the quilt to create the many colorful, bright images of Dr. King. This is a gorgeous quilt. I would go just to see this quilt. Okay, quilt number 3 is called Cabin Gossip. This quilt is interesting because Kenya was asked to enter a contest whose theme was Abraham Lincoln. And Kenya said, quote, well, I'd like to do something on Abraham Lincoln. I mean, I've read a lot about Abraham Lincoln, and I know he's always credited for bringing a nation that was basically separated into a union. So I said, this would be a great idea. He said, yes, we'll work on Abraham Lincoln. And he says, I wanted to capture Lincoln's image. Kenya had also always wanted to do a monochrome quilt, one that had only one color on it. And this is what he produced with Cabin Gossip. Basically, it's all white with the red and blue touches here and there. Let's see. He says, so I found these different shades of white and I began to piece them together to bring out the image of Abraham Lincoln. And when you go to the show, or maybe you can zoom in, you'll see Abraham Lincoln in the center of the quilt there. He says, after collecting the fabric, the next thing was trying to get the right image of Lincoln, the image that's on the penny. And that is the iconic image of Abraham Lincoln. And so that's the image that he used. You'll see the image of Abraham Lincoln at the center of the quilt. It's hard to see, but anyway, it's there. All very subtle. The monochrome, all white, is stunning in person. Uh, we have some audio narrations that go with some of the quilts. The music for this quilt's audio narration is donated by the Soul Queen of New Orleans, Miss Irma Thomas herself. She's very famous, and she gave me her permission to use her music with the project. All right, the next quilt is called Juneteenth. Just like the national holiday. The quilt's title celebrates the freedom of slaves in Texas and the end of slavery in the U.S., June 19, 1865, in Texas. The audio narration features the song called Johnny 99 by Bruce Springsteen. Yes, Springsteen's team gave us permission to use his song. In the audio, Kenya talks about the nitty-gritty, heavy reality of what he was feeling in the courtroom so many years ago, 47 and more years ago, as the judge sentenced him to life in prison. Quote, I actually blanked out in the court. I didn't hear my sentence. But after I went back to the docks, a guy told me I got a life sentence, unquote. And about the quilt, Kenya says, when we think about the Juneteenth quilt, of course, it presents a consistent relationship between color, form, and proportions and dimension. On the quilt, there's some figures: Malcolm X, the Honorable Nelson Mandela, Booker T. Washington, E.B. Du Bois, the mother of W.E.B. Du Bois, Paul Robeson, Barack Obama. And Kenya says, I thought as much about these particular images because of their bold and out loud voices in reference to social justice in America and throughout the world. Sometimes I recall the Honorable Dr. Martin Luther King, and he said, the greatest evil is our silence in the face of injustice. So I think it's powerful that in the face of injustice that we're bold and out loud, end quote. This quilt is very bold and out loud, as Kenya likes to say, and he encourages all of us to be bold and out loud and speak up in the face of injustice. Okay, next quilt. This one is called Black Windows. The audio narration that accompanies this quilt, it's called Inside of Love by the American band called Nada Surf. The song was chosen because it feels to me like the yearning we each have to know what love feels like and how we value love. I think the idea of love is very important to the inside quilters especially. Kenya relates this quilt to his mother, who he loves very much. This quilt is all about how Kenya learned to work with colors and lights from his mother, when he was a child. He learned the benefit of light in the dark, and he learned how to create that. He talks about how the black is the most basic color, which pushes the light forward, brings the lighter fabric forward. Each of the lighter fabrics, he wanted it to look like it was neon or sunlight coming through like a stained glass window. He was trying to replicate stained glass and to express his mother's Catholic faith. This quilt is definitely bold and out loud. Okay, next quilt. The masks. Okay, the audio music for this quilt is from Venerable Robina, our Buddhist nun supporter, and her chant of Om Mane Padme Om. This is Kenya's study of African masks. This quilt is gorgeous. The masks are used for healing purposes and bringing forth the griots. So the mask, Kenya's trying to highlight the different nations on the continent of Africa. Kenya says, I guess I have a nostalgia for the continent, even though I have never been there. What's the best way to represent the African countries in a quilt? He asked himself. Quote, so I used different textures and colors to highlight each one of the nations. And I thought each one of the nations that I thought had beautiful masks. I like drawing. I draw the images on a piece of paper, then cut out the image, then put the image onto fabric, then cut the fabric. I use a silk stitch around the fabric to keep it from fraying. It's meticulous. It takes a lot of time. Sometimes the radio may be on when I'm quilting or I'm watching TV, but my focus, once I get involved in a quilt, my focus is definitely on the quilt. Okay, number 6. This one is very popular. It's called Red, White, and Baldwin. The audio, on the audio, Kenya's the narrator, and he says, hello, habari gani, his little bit of Swahili there, greeting. The music for this narration is by jazz musician Delfeo Marsalis of the famous Marsalis jazz family in New Orleans. The name is Red, White, and Baldwin. Kenya says about James Baldwin, the way I see it, James Baldwin is a champion of free speech, and his international prominence muffled the drumbeat of those who thought ex-slaves inferior, giving me, a neo-slave, a reason and cause to live out loud, to come out from the shadows. It's an honor to celebrate the legacy of James Baldwin. Why these colors? Kenya says, the colors represent the witnesses to diversity in crisis. James Baldwin, of course, taught on the subject of color. He says, the colors I chose are central to all we do. Next quote. Okay, this one is called Harriet Tubman Making Tracts. Okay, let's see. A musician from Australia lent her music to this quilt, to this narration. Her song is called Freedom. It is a perfect song for how Kenya laid out the tracks of the symbolic Underground Railroad on this quilt. And he drew images of Tubman all over the quilt, up and down, that you can sort of see here. If you look closely, you'll see Kenya's unique style of, he puts a layer of light fabric over images of Tubman, and this gives kind of like a window effect. It's his own creation, and it's very powerful. It's like you're looking through a window and you see Harriet Tubman looking back out at you. Kenya says, when I think about Harriet Tubman, her contribution to Africans in America is priceless. He says, when I was a child, I ain't never understood. What is this Underground Railroad? What is it all about? Is the railroad underground? As I grew, I began to read more about Harriet Tubman. When I read Kate Larson's biography of Tubman, I was overwhelmed. I said to myself, wow, I have to capture this icon of a woman on a quilt. And he did a fantastic job. So one of the benefits of being involved in the project is every Inside Quilter received a copy of Dr. Kate Clifford Larson's biography of Harriet Tubman. Next quilt. This one is called The Lynching Trees. This is a very powerful quilt. As you'll see, the tiny nooses on the tree limbs all over the quilt top. Kenya incorporated these nooses as a change in his plans. At first, when he told a friend his idea about how he wanted to hang small human figures from the limbs of the trees on the quilt, his friend told him, oh no, that is too graphic. And so Kenya thought it might be better to just put these nooses on the trees. Kenya's friend influenced him in how he depicted lynching. He says of the trees he painted, if you look close, you can see the trees. So he painted on the fabric, trees in the swamps. He says, if you look deeply, you'll find images and scenes in swamps where these lynchings had actually transpired. And then you'll see the small nooses representing the lynch victims. The music for this quilt's audio narration is loaned by Joan Baez and her song, Here's to You, Nicola and Bart. The men named Sacco and Vanzetti, who were wrongfully executed in 1927 Massachusetts. Their main crime, they were immigrants, and there was a lot of anti-immigrant sentiment back then, as there is now in the USA, by a certain administration. There were widespread protests over their case, but they were executed anyway. There were claims of their innocence impossible judicial unfairness in their trials. Their case was about an armed robbery and two people who worked in a shoe factory who got killed. Okay, that's the lynching trees. Very powerful. It is a gorgeous quilt. I hope you can see it in person. It is moving. All right, next quilt is called I Can't Breathe, Eric Garner. We wanted to remember Eric Garner and his horrible choking death by NYC, New York City police officers. We wanted to remember the cultural items associated with his death. So you see the I Can't Breathe t-shirt on the quilt top. This quilt's top includes a patch made by inside quilter Kenny Zulu Whitmore, who in the audio narration, he tells of the time when he was a teenager, 15 years old, in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, about 1967. He and his cousin were coming home from a basketball game and they were stopped by police. The police pulled shotguns on them. The officers said they were both under arrest. Zulu and his cousin were also sprayed with gas. The police ultimately shot Zulu's cousin to death in front of him as they were both just standing there. This is what Zulu remembers when he saw the coverage of Eric Garner's death on TV from inside Angola Prison in 2014, when Eric Garner was killed, July 7, 2014. When you look at the quilt, maybe we can zoom in, or if you see it in person, kind of on the right-hand side, under the I and the C, you'll see a circle patch. It says, and this is, Zulu made this patch. He wrote on the patch, the circle. It says, respect existence or expect resistance. He is a very strong man. Zulu survived 37 and a half years in solitary confinement. He's in Maine prison today. Okay, the next quilt. James Baldwin quote number 3. The quilt's audio narration features the classic song Stagger Lee by Taj Mahal. He gave us permission to use it. So you see, we have some nice musician support, and they are political activists in their own musician ways. The Baldwin quote is, "How can I believe what you say when I see what you do?" The theme of the quilt is hypocrisy, and it didn't take Baldwin many words to get the point across of how white Americans said one thing to Black Americans, but then did another thing, with liberty and justice for all, but not for Black Americans. James Baldwin spent his entire life writing about the injustices that befell African Americans in America and how their lives were not given equal status by white America in the years he lived. He mastered the art of calling out racism and the inequality in America in his writings, speeches, and other means by which he communicated. Dre, 48 years old and in Angola Prison, one of the inside quilters, he narrated this audio. And when asked how he handles hypocrites, he said, "I'm going to bring it to them first. I'm going to point it out to them. And then he will try to show them the difference, what's taking place in my eyes. So when a person says one thing to me and does another, I need them to show me that I'm not tripping, because they're saying one thing and doing another." And he's like, well, am I tripping? Hypocrisy can make us question what we see with our own eyes or hear with our own ears after we've seen or heard the opposite. Okay, the next quilt. Our last quilt is called Pockets of Hope. Ellen Nelson is an outside quilter. She's wonderful. She's a fantastic quilter. She set the theme of hope for this quilt and led the team on this quilt's creation. She asked all of us to submit the names of folks we respect, and her emphasis on this quilt is upstanders, namely people who have generated positive social change. The idea is about hope and how that can be an important thing for men in prison, because sometimes all else is gone for them. Their families have disappeared, their life dreams are gone, and they literally have so very little. Ellen says, quote, "Sometimes when I get a correspondence from one of the inside quilters, I think about what their world is like. What can I do to help kind of lift them up? They certainly lift me up with their words of encouragement. Remember, we email back and forth a lot. It's a wonderful sort of give and take with the men inside. The idea is that hope can be accessible to anyone. Anyone can reach out and access it, and it buoys us up. It's a universal tool. Ellen says, quote, sometimes I think of it as a person in terms of hope sitting by my side, or hope lending me a hand to help me up and out of a hole. If we can zoom in, again, maybe you can go and see it in person, we may be able to make out some of the upstanders on this quilt. Remember, upstander is a person who has generated positive social change. Excuse me. Some of the upstanders on this quilt include the Buddhist nun, Venerable Robina Corton, our patron, David Walker, freedom fighter, abolitionist in the 1820s Boston, who encouraged slaves to fight for their freedom, Elijah Muhammad, American religious leader, leader of Nation of Islam, J. Mamie Till, Emmett Till's mother, Dr. Martin Luther King, Justice Thurgood Marshall, Denmark Vesey, a former slave about the early 1800s, who was a carpenter in South Carolina, and he planned an insurrection to attain freedom. Details of the insurrection leaked, and Vesey was caught and hanged with other slaves. Another upstander is Cicely Tyson on the quilt, Muhammad Ali, the boxer, Ida B. Wells, an activist against lynching in the United States, and the Buddhist monk Ajahn Brahm. The kids' clothing represents the potential of the next generation. And this is the last quilt in our presentation today. Thank you to everyone. Okay.
Oh, thank you so much, Maureen. And those of you who are watching live, if you have questions for Maureen about any individual quilts or the project as a whole, feel free to put them into the chat. I know I have some questions, and some of them, Maureen, have actually come from students who have been passing through the galleries with various classes so far this fall. And one of the most common ones, and I keep saying, like, don't worry, I'll wait and I'll ask Maureen when they're doing this live. The question has been pretty practical, and it's been about the access to sewing machines for the inside quilters. What kind of sewing machines do they use, or are they doing this all by hand?
They do have access to sewing machines. I don't know what brands. They are allowed to purchase sewing machines. They can use their own money to purchase a sewing machine. Kenya at one point owned 6 sewing machines. So they can purchase sewing machines. The prison, except for the hospice quilters, the hospice volunteer quilters, their machines are provided by the prison. But in this project, Kenya has his own quilt, and any of the inside quilters can buy a sewing machine if they want. I don't know the makes or models. I think I asked Kenya one time, but I forget what he said.
And I was assuming there had to be machines because some of the quilts, thinking of Red, White, and Baldwin, that the stitching is just so immaculate. I mean, some it really does look like this has been clearly hand stitched applique style on the top of the quilt by hand. But
Yeah.
something like this just looks like it had to have been handmade. So I was wondering about whether they had. That's good to know. They do have access to the machines. And I also wanted to follow up on something that you mentioned that some of our people watching or who will be watching this later might not realize. And it was about, you mentioned the emails, and you said with the support from the
Right.
Buddhist nun, who is the support of the project, the men can have access to email. And I think a lot of people don't realize that they have to pay for that email access, right?
Right. The men, the men, the men have to pay for the stamps for the email letters that they write. But the men in the prison, with the funds that Venerable Robina contributes to us every month, if I write to Kenya or Sharif or Stutter or Lil, I always check the box at the end of the email that says, send him a stamp so he can reply to this email. So they are, in effect, able to write emails free of charge because they're in the project. But if you're not in the project, you have to buy that email stamp. It's
Yeah.
yeah, it's a big industry making a lot of money off phone calls for the inmates, emails for the inmates, videos for the inmates. Whatever they have access to, they have to buy it. They are allowed to have tablets. Sometimes Kenya or Zulu will call me from their tablet. It's not such a good connection, but it works sometimes. They have to buy their tablets, or people have to buy tablets for them. So whatever they have inside, if they want something a little bit nicer than just like prison issued clothes, they have to buy it themselves with their own money. And that's kind of the difficulty because most of these men don't have any money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And visitors to the exhibition, we were mentioning the QR codes where they can listen to these interviews, and they'll
Yeah.
hear on the interviews, like the recorded line is often relatively poor quality, and it will get interrupted by the automated recording that this is the Department of Corrections. And it's just a reminder, this is not any old interview that you're presenting when we go through the show.
Right. I don't think I put in the prison recording for every audio, but it is in some of them. And it is a stark reminder, this is recorded, you're on a recorded line, and it just brings home where he is and who you're talking to and where you're calling into. And it's kind of jarring because after about, they say the phone calls last for 15 minutes, but after about 12 or 13, they cut off. And you have to you get a 1 minute warning. The phone call is going to cut off in 1 minute. So you kind of have to either decide, call me back, or, okay, say all your goodbyes real quick before it cuts off.
Another question that I had to do with Martin got arrested again because,
Uh-huh.
again, thinking about the Veneral Robina, are these Dharma wheels that we're seeing around the perimeter?
Oh, that was just some fabric that I had to finish it
Oh,
up with. It looks like Dharma wheels, though. I just happened to have that fabric. Kenya did the beautiful purple, blue, dark green triangle, like I think that's called windmill pattern. He did everything except for the red kind of like Dharma wheels and the black and white stripe up top and on the left side. But not Dharma wheels, but they might as well be because, we've got a lot of Buddhist influence in this project.
and when you mentioned that he drew by hand the New Yorker cover with Martin Luther King Jr.'s image, I was assuming that he had used some sort of transfer because he really did manage. And the same thing with the Harriet Tubman quilt making tracks.
Right.
He so perfectly copied it each time. I assume that there was some sort of transfer method he was using, but he's doing
Well,
this all freehand.
I think for this quilt and the picture of Martin Luther King, I think he does have some sort of transfer method. And I keep meaning to ask him. Sometimes, how you can transfer using an overhead projector.
Yeah, I wouldn't imagine that they necessarily have access to that equipment, although maybe
Yeah,
he's coming up with a DIY workaround. But I would be
yeah,
very impressed if he's copying out by eye. I mean, he has a lot of experience in art making from his time on the inside, that's for sure.
yeah. And he's a very good drawer artist. Yeah. So I'm going to say he had some kind of transfer method here. And then he had the individual color schemes for each panel. Harriet Tubman, those look more like he really did just draw them on there. But yeah, he's very good. He's very good. And I love all the different color combinations. So behind Martin Luther King, there's a cop
Mhm.
arresting Dr. King. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, one of the details that a lot of students have commented on when we've looked at this quilt is how the police officer, changes in sort of if he's smiling in some of them, and some of them he's very angrily yelling. So even though
Uh-huh.
Martin Luther King is just calmly being arrested in each one, it's like there is sort of a very subtle variation in each one of the panels.
Yeah, and the variation of the cop face, that's got to be Kenya. Yeah, so he decided to put his own little editorial in there, colors, and he kept Dr. King the same throughout, but changed up a little bit with the arresting officer. Correct. Yeah.
I also want
And
to go back.
oh, go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
I wanted to
No, no, no,
point
you.
out the columns, the vertical columns of the yellow strips. I don't know. It's just gorgeous up close. They're like little tiny strips, and he just sews them all together. Kenya is really good at sewing teeny tiny little bits of cloth together. I don't know how he does it. He sets his machine on a tiny little sewing, stitch, and he goes at it. Yep, yep.
I also wanted to ask another question about Black Windows because this has been another one that, it's sort of the most abstract of all of the quilts in the show. And
Uh-huh.
there is the explanation, if people access the audio and they listen to Kenya talk a little bit about the stained glass, but it's been really interesting with groups, just asking them without even mentioning the title, asking them what they think of. And a few themes that have come out, almost one person in every class will say stained glass. So you
Oh,
can tell
good.
Kenya that the idea of it glowing against the black is absolutely coming out.
Great.
But roadways have come up a lot
Oh,
with
yeah.
students.
Uh-huh.
Film strip is what I thought of, the
Oh,
old-fashioned
yeah.
film strip with the little boxes at
Yeah.
the side. And
Yeah.
the other one that has come up a lot is a building. And then when I
Oh.
say, oh, the title's Black Windows, everyone goes, oh, that's what it is. It's meant to be an
Oh,
apartment building. These are all the different windows. And I think
oh,
people are
that's
also thinking of, Faith Ringgold and her images of things like Tar Beach and images of New York. So it's
oh,
been
yeah.
really interesting. The one that doesn't have the most sort of obvious representational content is one that I think people have really responded to.
Oh, that's interesting. I'll tell him. Lots of response. I'll tell him.
And since
Lots
we're
of.
looking at this one, can you comment on how the sources of fabric, like they purchase any fabric, or is it all donations that are being sent in for the project?
Um, I hate to sound so ignorant, but I'm not sure 100%. I know for many years, Kenya was the co-director of the Angola Drama Club, and then he became the director, and he was also the costume maker, and he had access to a lot of fabric. So
Okay.
I think through that affiliation, even though it was years ago, he still might have access to the fabric of the drama club. They are allowed to buy fabric. Um, I've never asked Kenya if he's bought fabric from the outside. I know it sounds kind of crazy that I don't know, but when when we talk on the phone, we have so much stuff to talk about and get through. But anyway, so inmates can buy fabric and they can buy their own fabric if they want. Um, but a lot of times when I put out a call for a quilt and say who wants to contribute a patch or something, they have to get their fabric. So sometimes I'll get a piece of fabric, like floral piece of fabric from Zulu. And it's like, where did he get that from? It's great. He'll write on it with the theme of the quilt or whatever, but where did he get it? I don't know because um, there's not like a sewing machine room down the walk where they can just go and pick up a piece of fabric. One time, we put out a call for a theme. Theme was about Whipped Peter, the slave in Louisiana who was terribly whipped, and he had all the big keloid scars on his back.
Hmm.
Um, so I got a piece on that from Zulu, and he took the front or back, doesn't matter, of a t-shirt and cut it. I got the front of a t-shirt with the sleeves and the collar section, and he did his piece about Whipped Peter on a t-shirt cover, a t-shirt. So I've also gotten a piece, I think, of maybe a pillowcase or something, just a piece of white fabric. Tex always uses this very rough kind of, it's white, but it's very rough. It's almost not even fabric, but it's material. So they get it wherever they can.
Interesting. And the reason I ask in conjunction with Black Windows is because
Yeah,
we've often, and it's so large when you're seeing it, you're standing in front of it in the gallery. It's so big
it's
that
big. Yeah.
a lot of the fabric seemed a little bit, they seem a little old fashioned. It's a little grandma, like they could have come off someone's upholstery in the attic. And so we wonder, do those being the kind of materials that someone might donate, but now that you say it, maybe do a theater program, from decades ago, and they could still be going back to that well.
Yeah. And I know there are people who donate boxes of fabric to the prison. I haven't quite figured out. I've been told I cannot donate fabric, but I know people have donated, and I wouldn't be surprised if some of the local women in that area just send big boxes of their old quilting fabric. And yeah, some of the patches do look like old-fashioned pieces of fabric, like your grandma would use. Um, so at some point, maybe Kenya had access to some of the donated fabric. Yeah, and a lot of this fabric and this particular quilt, this has kind of a sheen to it.
Hmm.
Maybe like upholstery fabric. I think on Harriet Tubman making tracks. Can you pull that one up? Is it easy?
It is. Hold on. There we go.
I think a lot of this kind of medium brown with or like a little bit towards the left, the brown with kind of the lighter brown or gray, like tracks, like a railroad tracks. That's kind of like flannel. I think maybe I recognized that brown kind of flannelish from some of the costumes he made when he was in the drama club. So maybe at one point when he made this quilt, he did have access to the drama club stash of fabric.
Interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
And we are coming to the end of our time, and I don't think our audience has any burning questions, though you can always send them to museum@fairfield.edu after the fact. If you have them, we'll pass them along to Maureen. But the last
Oh,
question I have also came from a student. She asked me this literally just yesterday, and I'm
uh-huh.
sure the answer is different for every quilt, but she wanted to know, of course, how long do the quilts take to make?
Oh boy. Well, I couldn't answer. I could just sort of answer in general for the ones that I kind of initiated. Oh God, maybe 30 or 40 hours. We made this quilt in a matter of weeks. I wouldn't be surprised. When he just sets his mind to it, he just gets in that little room and starts sewing. So it's really hard to say. And then sometimes I'll receive just the top piece from quilt from Kenya, and then I'll decide I don't have time to finish it, so it'll get mailed to Ellen in Maine. She'll either finish the whole thing or she'll add stuff and send it back to me. It might then get sent to Arizona where another quilter is, and she'll do the back and the border and put the loops on top. So a lot of time. Each quilt takes a lot of time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a totally fair answer. And I
Yeah.
want to thank everyone, our audience, for watching. I know, Maureen, you wanted to say a few last words of thank you and goodbye to our audience as well.
Yes, thank you everybody for looking at the live stream and going to the exhibition and looking at the quilts. If you have any more questions, you can write to Michelle, or Michelle can give out my email if you want to either interested in being a pen pal with the guys, or you want to just send one quick note to Kenya. You can send it to me on email and I can send it in. It's free for you. It's quick. Just literally, just if you want to send a hello email, or I saw the show. Thank you. It was great. Um, and I hope you can see the quilts. They are such, oh gosh, they're such a symbol of men in or people who don't give up. And they even go in deep into themselves to pull out their creativity when they're in the midst of this really, really, really awful, extreme, difficult living situation. And these men are lifers. They have really at this point, none of them are looking at a chance of getting out. There's always the hope. They're working on their cases. Some of them have some legal issues that are somewhat active. But for the most part, there's not a whole lot of no light at the end of the tunnel for them. They're there for life, and the state would just love to keep them in there until they die. So if you want to write to them any kind of little booster note, or want to be involved with them, or if you want to be involved, if you're a quilter, you're free to join us. You can be an outside quilter. We're easy to get along with. There's no stress.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in. And please, if you're in Fairfield before December 13th, come to the Fairfield University Art Museum and see Stitching Time. It really will repay your visit. And thank you so much to our speaker, Maureen, for her time this evening. Have a good night,
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye-bye.